Hi class, welcome to week 5. So in this week we will go over loading data, which is your chapters for this week, which is chapter 7, and then as well as chapter 20. Chapter 7 will cover reading a CSV file. So we'll talk a little bit about CSV files today. And then chapter 20 will cover reading Excel files, which is more standard. It also covers loading things in from Google Sheets, which might be very useful. I won't require that for this class, but if you tend to keep data as Google Sheets, then that would be a good thing for you to attend to and pay attention. Then also there's chapters 21, 22, 23, I believe, which will cover reading in data from databases, reading in data from other online sources like web scraping. Those are all things that we're not going to cover in this class. So if that's something that you need, then I would definitely read that. So if you do data analysis by pulling data from databases, then that would be a very useful chapter for you to read. Also, if you have data sets that are greater than memory, so what we mean by that is, say, for example, you are trying to process a data set that is 40 gigabytes in size, but your computer only has 32 gigabytes of RAM. So separating out RAM from your hard drive, the way that R runs and crunches things, it's all in your computer's RAM. So most computers nowadays come with about 16 gigabytes of RAM. Several of your applications are using those. So you don't have all 16 available. But if you wanted to crunch numbers off of a data set that was going to be multi-gigabytes in size, using a lot of the things that we're discussing is just simply not going to be possible. But remember, getting gigabytes of size of data sets is really um, not typical unless you are into big data. And if you're going into big data, then this is just one class of probably many classes that you'll need to get yourself into that. So what we're talking about, is not just hundreds of thousands of data lines, but hundreds of millions of data lines until you start running into some of those memory related issues. So anyway, purpose of that is we won't be using that for this class. If that's something where you're going, then read those chapters. They'll be very helpful in getting you started because there are workarounds so that you can start using R for these really large data sets. But since that won't apply to the majority of us, we won't be talking about that specifically in this class. So what we're going to talk about now is reading CSV files and reading Excel files. So CSV are what we call comma separated files. To be honest, now that I'm thinking about it, I have no idea why it's not CSF, but it's rather CSV. But we'll just leave it there for now. So chapter 7 is going to be all about reading CSV files. Um, CSV files are probably the most universal data format that you'll come across. Uh, they do not require needing any Microsoft products to open. They will open on Mac, they'll open on PC, they'll open on just about anything. You can read them with a text editor. It's a very simple data format, which is basically each cell in like what you would imagine for an Excel, each value is just simply separated by a comma. And then you have multiple lines. So I could add 4, 6, 7. This would basically be a 2 by 3 table that is 2 rows and 3 columns. Um, where this would be 2, 4 is the first column, 5, 6 is the second column, 6, 7 is the third column. So a very simple data format for doing that. Excel has a much more complicated data storage and format. And the reason for that is it allows your data to be saved. That it adds a lot of kind of extra features, if you will. So like Excel might know that something is a timestamp. Excel might know that something is a character value. Some columns might be sums of other columns, but it'll remember that this column is a sum of that column. So Excel sheets contain a lot more information, whereas a CSV file contains the very basic information, which is just what is your value for each individual cell. So if you are sharing data with others, if you are uploading data to a database, many times it's recommended to use a CSV format because that's going to be the most universal, most easily accessible, and the simplest type of data storage. We can read CSV files using commands read.csv or read_CSV. Read.csv is in the base package, base R, and read_CSV comes in with the tidyverse. So you have to have those libraries loaded. So speaking of, these will be the libraries that we'll be using for today or for this week. So I'm just going to go ahead and load them in this code for us. It includes the tidyverse, ggplot, and readxl, which probably by me saying it out loud makes you think it should read Excel files, which is exactly what it does. So read.csv or read_CSV will be used for reading CSV files, which is the most standard data format that if you are not using Excel, CSV is probably what you would be using. One quick gotcha that has gotten me before is if you're collaborating or working with Europeans, their CSV files are different. And that's because they use commas in the same way that we use decimal points. So we might say 2.3 is 2 period 3. European would write that same value as 2,3. So because of that, they cannot use commas because it would mean that you can't use any decimal points in any of your numbers. So instead, they use semicolons as the separator value. So R can read this using read CSV2. Or if you do read.csv, you can specify that the separator between individual units is a semicolon and not a comma. So just a little gotcha if you were working with European-based files, because they definitely do have that, and that has gotten me before. Now, read.xlsx is the Excel format. So .xls is an older Excel version. .xlsx is the new Excel versions. So read_Excel will read both of those kinds of documents, both the .xls and the .xlsx. It works relatively similar to the CSV files. Only difference is that it used a specific Excel file. Then there are a variety of other different sort of read-in tools. So things like read table or read TSV, because in addition to CSV, there are other formats to save data, like a tab delimited folder, a fixed width delimited file. These are all different ways that you can store the data to separate units, either instead of commas using tabs or instead of tabs using a specific fixed width. All of these are possible. To be honest, I almost never come across these unless I am pulling data from some other kind of random source. But they're possible, so you have these additional options for that. So with that, I want to move into give it a practice. So there is a paper that I just kind of picked randomly that is linked in your data that has a raw data set uploaded as the supplemental materials. I went ahead and downloaded that data set for the supplemental materials for you, and that is uploaded in this week's module. And what I want you to do, I'll come back to you in just a second, but figure out using the read Excel. I want you to the question mark read Excel. so that it will give you the documentation for it. Read the documentation, or if you've already done the chapter, perhaps you already know this, and figure out how to read in the document that is in our module for this week, which is the raw data for the paper here, to read in the various sheets of this Excel file and save each of those sheets as a named data set that would appear over here in your data set. So we'll go ahead and stop the video here, and the next video we'll come back and show you how to do this. But go ahead and give it a try yourself first.